Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast. We're glad you're here. We got lots to get to. We're going to take down the Brady Tkachuk rumors that continue to plague the offseason thus far. The future of Claude Giroux in Ottawa. It's been a few days since our last episode, so the Rob DeMeo signing went down since the last time we got together, so we'll touch on that as well. And the last 10 years of first rounders by the Ottawa Senators. We're going to review that as well. All coming up today here on the program. I'm Steve Warren, along with the coach, Greg Kennedy, wearing his Slave Lake Ice Dogs jersey / t-shirt. How are you, Greg?
I'm good, Steve. Good. Yeah, I don't dig this one out very often, but it's cool in two ways. I think it's cool looking, and I think it's cool because it's cool. It's not hot. I like this t-shirt.
Yeah, it's a good logo, I got to say. And that was a team you coached a couple of winters ago. What level is that again?
Well, they called it Junior A, but we'll go with that.
Okay.
part of the G Show, for people out there who might know the G Show, the Greater Metro Junior Hockey League, mostly in Ontario, but they did have a Western division there for more than a few years. I went out to Slave Lake, and I enjoyed my time out there. I think I came home. I came home happier than when I left. I'm okay.
Good. Well, let's jump in today because there's lots of people who aren't very happy with some of the rumors that are going on around out there. And you called this to my attention today. It's Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. He covers the St. Louis Blues. And that, of course, is where the Tkachuk family emanates from. And they were throwing out more Brady Tkachuk potential trade rumors, maybe to the Blues. They threw, I think, Jordan Kyrou out there and Pavel Buchnevich as possibly going the other way. And it's getting to a stage now, I think for some people, it's like, oh my God, sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. I don't feel like that in this case. No. Spit and Chicklets threw out a report about it. They think that Brady Tkachuk might be on the move as well. But today, I think Steve Staios, the GM of the Ottawa Senators, I think he probably summed up my feelings about these suggestions, reports, speculation. He summed it up the way I couldn't in a million years come up do any better with my assessment of it. He called it complete BS. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, there are a lot of times when GMs hold their cards tight to the vest and may kind of dance around issues like this. But when a guy comes right out and says it's complete BS, it's complete BS. I cannot see it happening. I started to think to myself, like, this guy's the heart and soul of the team. You're the new ownership group. Could you imagine the backlash if they traded Brady? Could you imagine the backlash if Brady actually asked out? That would be just as bad for him. I just can't see it happening. I started thinking about heart and soul guys that have been traded over the years and by anybody anywhere. And, I went all the way back to like Ronnie Francis getting traded out of Hartford or Wendell Clark getting traded out of Toronto. I really can't think of many heart and soul guys like Brady who get traded. It just doesn't happen. I don't think general managers ever want to make that mistake.
Yeah. Can you imagine being someone who's tasked with selling Ottawa Senators season tickets this summer and you have to go up to somebody? It's like, well, you got rid of Brady Tkachuk though. He had 4 years left in his contract. He's 24 years old. He's, like you said, heart and soul guy. We need more of Brady, not less of Brady. And your comeback to that is going to be, we did get Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich, huh? Not too shabby. Click. I hang up the phone.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. Now, if this is a discussion in 3 years, like if the Sens can't work the kinks out here in the next couple of years, we can go back and revisit this conversation in 3 years' time in 2027, because at that stage, Brady Tkachuk will be in Jacob Chychrun and Claude Giroux mode, where they're entering the final year of their contract, and there's naturally speculation with any player who's that, but he's got 4 years left on his contract. Everybody simmer down. Just stop it with the Brady Tkachuk rumors and rumblings. It's not going to happen, not anytime soon.
Yeah, I get it that there's rumors out there about Jacob Chychrun. Today I was reading about Detroit being interested. Earlier it was an Atlantic Division team, and then it was a Metro Division team. No names are ever mentioned team-wise, but Detroit I actually read today. Okay, sure, trade him to Detroit, but what are you getting back? And is that something you want to do? But anybody talking about trading Brady is just, no, it's not going to happen. No way.
Now let's move on to that other name I just mentioned, and that Claude Giroux is entering the final year of his contract. And I would bet that at this stage of the game, he himself probably isn't certain what he wants to do. He did come here for family reasons. He's been here. Like, Ottawa's basically his hometown. The guy's 36 now. This has been his home since he was 14 years old, moving here from Hearst, Ontario. So it's been great. It's been a really positive story, seeing the homecoming, and that's why he signed a free agent contract with the Ottawa Senators and not somewhere else. But the hometown thing will only take you so far. When he signed here, I think Claude Giroux said to himself, not only is it a hometown, but this team is on the rise. I don't think he factored in what these 2 years might be like. And I think right now he's in a wait and see mode. But if he has another year like the last two, I think everything is, I mean, there's lots of scenarios that could go down, but I would think that Claude Giroux at 37 next summer might be thinking about greener pastures again.
Yeah, like maybe it's something you visit trade deadline time as to where the team's at. I think if Claude Giroux were closer to retirement, he might say, yeah, move me at the trade deadline. Let me get a shot to go somewhere else. But if this team has a decent season and they're doing well come trade deadline, I think that's an opportunity for Claude to say, yeah, okay, things have turned around. I think Claude Giroux would never say publicly, but I have a feeling that Claude Giroux wasn't too impressed with the country club atmosphere that we're sort of hearing about now. I know that you at one time had heard a story about Claude before the first training camp, wondering like, when are things going to get going? He was expecting more communication or more direction from the coaching staff and stuff prior to that training camp. I don't think Claude Giroux was too happy with the DJ Smith era here. And maybe it's, look, Claude, give it a shot here with a new coach and a new management team, and then we'll talk contract later.
Yeah, for well over a decade, he was a Philadelphia Flyer, and things happened in a certain way in the offseason leading up to training camp and physicals and all that. And during camp in that first year in Ottawa, that's what I was hearing, that he had some concerns that, why isn't this happening right now? Wait a minute, this is usually when we do this and that. And so it's possible. Yeah, there's no question. That's certainly a possibility. But I mean, there's lots of scenarios that could go down. One of them could be, and this is no knock on the guy, but he'll be 37 next year. And so Father Time is undefeated, as they say. And if he goes and has a really kind of takes a step back in the first little while, then the Sens might even be having a second thought. Well, maybe we better get something for this guy before he falls too much further. They'll be keeping an eye on where he's at. To me, I don't feel like that's in the cards, just because I see how hard that guy works in the summertime. I think he's really taking care of his body, and I think he'll be one of those, because he's almost never hurt, knock on wood. But if you look at his games played throughout his career, he has not missed substantial amounts of time at any point in his career. I'm going to knock on wood a second time now. But I think that between his work ethic in the summer and his injury history, I think he can be like a Joe Pavelski guy who not only plays until he's 39, 40, but plays very effectively.
Yeah, we know that Claude Giroux is a very dedicated off ice, hard worker. Training is very important to him. And yeah, he might be 37, but he's not really a 37-year-old. He's more like a 34-year-old compared to most 37-year-olds who are either out of the league by now or not playing the kinds of minutes and producing with the kind of numbers that he is. He might be the kind of guy, if this team gets to the playoffs, you can't always turn back the clock, but you know what? You can wind it sometimes. You can still wind it up. I could see him being a guy, if this team ever got to the playoffs, I could see him being a real serious performer for this team.
Yeah, and I think that even if there is a step back, I think we can agree from where he was 10 years ago, he doesn't possess that breakaway speed. His quickness is still good, but his breakaway speed is not maybe what it was 10 years ago. Happens to all of us. But at the same time, I feel like even if he does take kind of a step back and slips out of the top six, that's still a guy that's going to help you in a third line role because he plays the game the right way. He plays both sides of the puck. And so I really feel like his future is, probably, a 2-year contract. Now, this is all up to Claude Giroux. If Giroux is still up for it and he's still all about family and still wants to be a Senator to close out his career, I would say the Sens will be on board with that for as long as he wants to go, unless he takes a massive dive and fade. But I really feel like that's not in the cards. And if it is, it won't be so much that he won't be an asset to them in some other way, maybe outside of the top 6. Let us take a time out of the program. When we come back, we're going to talk about Rob DeMeo, new director of player personnel and pro scouting. Pro scouting's been a bit of a bugaboo for the Ottawa Senators over the last, decade. So we'll get into that. We'll also talk about the last 10 years of first rounders for the Ottawa Senators and some general NHL news that's pretty exciting as well. All coming up after these words. I am so done with old school Christmas lights. The tangling, the burning out, the minus 30-degree installation dangling from a ladder. Goodbye Christmas lights. Hello Celebrite, your permanent holiday lighting solution. I've got them on my home right now. When it's daylight, they're absolutely invisible. But at nighttime, things come to life. Right now, with the beautiful weather, we're looking forward to Canada Day. And of course, the classic colors of Christmas. You can really make the lights dance, all controlled from your smartphone. And on those nights when there is no occasion or holiday, you can roll with just a beautiful, subtle white light. And the installation team from Celebrite Ottawa was fantastic. So you can keep on rolling with old school Christmas lights, or you can contact them today at celebrite.ca. Yay!
This is Ryan. Ryan would love to start his own podcast as a fun way to create content for all his platforms, to better connect with his customers and build a new audience. But Ryan isn't great with technology, and he has a lot of questions. What's the easiest way to record a high-quality podcast? Does he need to travel to a studio? What equipment will he need? How does he get his podcast online? What if he has an out-of-town guest? Capital Podcast had all of Ryan's answers. After a free consultation, we took care of everything for him. All Ryan had to worry about was jumping on the mic and starring in his own show. He's recording this week's episode right from his office. His expert guest this week is one of his customers who's in a Chicago hotel room. And Capital Podcast is online with them, making sure the final product is perfect. Easy, convenient, professional. Contact us today and star in your own show with capitalpodcast.ca.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen, and let's do it. We're going to track the last 10 years of Ottawa Senator first-rounders at the NHL draft. In the last decade, Greg, the Sens have drafted 11 players in the first round. Some were successful, some were complete busts. And there really isn't much to hang their hat on in the last 3 years, is there?
Yeah. Well, last year it was traded to Arizona in the Chikrin deal. The year before was traded to Chicago in the DeBrincat deal. And the year before that was Tyler Boucher. So a bit of a dry spell since 2020, which we could all agree was the greatest first round draft performance by any general manager, any team ever in any sport.
2020 was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It was Tim Stützle, 3rd overall, Jake Sanderson, 5th overall, Ridly Greig, 28th overall. And so 2020 kind of made up for the next 3 years that would come when you get down to it, because they did a lot there. And that was largely because of the Erik Karlsson deal. You got your 3rd pick from San Jose in the Karlsson deal. The 28th came from the Islanders in the Pajot deal. The 5th just came from the Sens being terrible. But that is 3 very, very good hockey players. And there was one other draft year where they did well in the first round, and that was getting Brady Tkachuk, and that was not a slam dunk. Now, the Montreal Canadiens saved the Sens maybe from themselves a little bit. I shouldn't put it that manner, because the Montreal Canadiens at number 3 could have taken Brady Tkachuk, and they went with Kotkaniemi, and so that set the Sens up for success because Brady Tkachuk was, for a lot of people, a fairly obvious choice, but they could have gone with Zadina which a lot of fans were pressuring them to do.
Yes.
So at least kudos for making what would be the most glaringly appropriate choice one can imagine.
Yeah, and you could say the same thing with the Timmy Stützle and Jake Sanderson. It was sort of kind of fed to them as well. So it's right. If I take one thing away from this, it's that, maybe it's not so good to be 1-2. It's good to be 3-4-5. You can kind of see what other people do first. But then again, who knows? Maybe the Senators' book for the 2018 draft had Brady at 1. Or maybe their book for 2020 had Stützle at 1. Who knows? Did they, how many times the general manager says, well, our 15th pick, who turns out to be a superstar. I say, well, he was the highest guy we had left in the draft. I don't know whether that's just GMs and head scouts trying to pad their resume or if it really is the case. But you make a good argument for not wanting to be 1, 2, or even 3 sometimes and let something kind of fall into your lap. Nothing wrong with that.
Quinn Hughes might be one guy that, in hindsight, you might at least dabble in the idea of. He's probably going to win the Norris this year. He had 92 points on the season. So while Tkachuk is awesome, and I think every Sens fan wouldn't trade him straight up for Quinn Hughes, there'd be a lot of people outside of Ottawa who would have said, okay, well, Tkachuk's not the best guy. It's actually Quinn Hughes. But I think both Canadian markets are very pleased with the player they actually get. Then in 2015, that was the other one that, you and I are back and forth on. In terms of the last 10 years of first-round picks, that wouldn't be another successful one in general, and that it landed you Thomas Chabot. Everybody liked Colin White. He didn't work out at all, but getting Chabot in the teens that year, the specific number was 18th overall. White went 21st overall. There's some hindsight there. You got Brock Besser sitting there, Travis Konechny, 2 players who went almost right after Colin White, but Thomas Chabot at 18th overall. That's a pretty good first-round pick right there.
It is, regardless of how you think he performs or the level of frustration that some fans may experience from watching him play. Let's give him an opportunity under a different coaching staff to become a better player. It could have been a lot worse. Like Boston sort of helped you out there, didn't they? Boston, that was the year that the Bruins had the 3 in a row and really only Jake DeBrusk was of any value to anybody. So that really helped them as well. And would you like to some of the guys afterwards? I don't know. Like Travis Konechny sort of to the forward group of the National Hockey League. He is what Thomas Chabot is to the defensemen of the National Hockey League. He's not a first-line guy. He's not a superstar, but he's certainly somebody who can contribute. And I think that's what Chabot is as a defenseman. So I'm okay with that.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, 18th overall for Chabot. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm more comparing Konechny and Besser to the Colin White pick.
Yeah.
Those two players went after Colin White. So
I would agree with
Chabot that. So here, that's the 3 out of the 10 that went pretty well. So let's take it from 2014. You had the Sens' 10th overall pick, as it was the last 2 years, traded to Anaheim as part of the Bobby Ryan deal. And had they kept the 10th that year, people love doing the old hindsight thing, right? If they'd kept the 10th that year, they could have helped themselves to Dylan Larkin at 15 or David Pastrnak, who went 25th overall.
Yeah.
That could have changed things. And I'm not going to go back to the 8th rounder. I'm just going with other guys that were available that also went in the first round, meaning they were well regarded and they were selected by other teams.
I agree. I hate listening to guys who look at the 4th round guy that was stolen out of Europe. It doesn't compare. Let's look at the top 30 versus the top 30, right? I'm with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Then in 2016, you got your Logan Brown at 11th overall. You loved Logan Brown. You loved talking about him, huh?
God. Charlie McAvoy, my friend, Charlie McAvoy.
That hurts.
Even Tage Thompson was there. I would have taken, again, hindsight's 2020, but Trent, is it Trent Frederick, guy in Boston? He was there.
Yep.
He's what you're missing right now, right? He's the kind of guy that you want. He's the kind of guy that you were reaching for with Tyler Boucher, but Trent Frederick was there. You could argue he's not a first-round draft choice, but look at the rest of the first round that year. There wasn't a lot there beyond I don't know, 18, 20, but yeah, no, I've never been a fan of Logan Brown. I never was. It wasn't as a junior. I didn't like him in Bantam, Steve. I've never been a fan of Logan Brown.
Okay. Tell us how you really feel. 2017 was Shane Bowers, a glorified second round pick because he went 28th overall that year. And right now he's an AHL player for Utica. And the Sens, to their credit, they traded him at a good time because his NHL stock was still reasonably high. It was just a few months after they drafted him that they made the Matt Duchene deal, and Bowers was involved with that. It's interesting because Bowers at that stage was the teammate of Brady Tkachuk, who the following summer would be drafted by the Ottawa Senators. But by this time, Bowers was a member of the Colorado Avalanche. And I guess your hindsight pick there would be Jason Robertson. I'm breaking my own rules here because this was such a because he's a glorified second rounder effectively. So Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars was 11 picks after Bowers. He would be nice to have as well. Then you got your 2018. We've said that's one of our favorites. 2019, Lassie Thompson, 19th overall. Just ended his time with, well, maybe in the NHL, might have turned his page, leaving a couple of weeks ago and signing with a Swedish team. So I'm looking at the February, the 2019 spring, like everybody that it was, we may have talked about this in the last episode, but Lassie Thompson, he's gone. Then, and he was brought in as part of the Matt Duchene goodbye trade, sending him to Columbus. So he was Columbus's pick. So they got Lassie Thompson, Jonathan Davidson, and who's the third guy? It'll come to me. Stand by. It's coming.
Swede, no? Russian.
Damn it. Dang.
It was a Euro.
Oh, yeah, it was the Russian. Yeah, it was Vitaly Abramov.
Abramov, yep.
Yeah. So all three of those guys are now playing outside of the NHL. Three non-NHLers for Matt Duchene, who's still scoring.
And Bowen Byram was in that. What deal was Bowen Byram in? He was in that deal too, right? The first
Bowen
round.
Byram was, yeah, he was in the deal that the Sens acquired Duchene. Yeah. We're talking here about the deal Duchene that sent away Duchene. Yeah, it sure is. There's a lot of messes.
Well, you're in trouble with Lassie Thompson pick when you're looking at guys who are taken after him that you could have had instead, and one of them you did get, right? Like Shane Pinto was the first pick of the second round. He turned out to be way better than the guy you took in the first round at 19 in Lassie Thompson, right?
Yeah. So I think in terms of first rounds over the last 10 years, I think we're going to say that Pierre Dorion and to some degree Brian Murray and their amateur scouting staffs were batting 300. And it's not baseball at the end of the day. It's a 300 batting average in the NHL draft, not a particularly good average. Let us move along, though. They must have some better things to talk about, like Rob DeMeo. Rob DeMeo is the new director of player personnel and director of professional scouting. He is a former teammate of GM Steve Staios, Greg.
Yep.
Spent a year in Boston in the 90s as a teammate of Steve Staios. And he spent the last 2 years as assistant GM of the Ducks. Kind of made his name as director of player personnel with the St. Louis Blues when they won a Stanley Cup in 2019. So that's a good thing. That's something to hang your hat on. But there'll be some fans who say, ooh, Anaheim. Been running things in Anaheim the last couple of years. The Ducks have been terrible for the last couple of years. But I think really any moves that he would have made in the last 2 years probably have yet to bear fruit, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, let's not be judging anything yet. Let's judge this guy on the first trade this team makes that involves NHL or AHL players. That's I'm going to judge this guy on his abilities as the director of pro scouting, because that has been a sore point for you and I for years now, that they don't seem to be able to acquire people and they don't seem to win a lot of trades. Let's just say it that way. And I'll be interested to see what kind of deals get made. And I'm sure he'll probably, I would think he might become the GM of Belleville. And we'll see what kind of moves he makes there, because I think that the bonus kind of takes on more responsibility, being groomed as the next GM after Staios. So I could see DeMaio becoming the GM in Belleville, and let's see what kind of acquisitions he can make for that team and finding some talent for them.
Well, that'd be interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I just assumed Bonus would stay on in the Belleville GM role. And DeMaio, to me, has more experience than Bonus does, so I thought he might be the next one in line. But we'll see how it all plays out. What I do like is I think that as a manager, whether you're talking about Staios or DeMaio, I think there's some degree of wanting the type of team that resembles the type of player you were. Staios was a hard-nosed stay-at-home defenseman. DeMaio was kind of a buzzsaw energy forward. And so I like that because those are two elements that this team could probably use a little more of, right?
Yeah, if both guys go out and manage to procure their type of people, or a mirror image of themselves, we'd all be pretty happy with that. So we'll see what that brings. I'm interested to see. Mainly, it's the trading and maybe on the free agent front and finding some of these guys that don't cost an arm and a leg, who can fill in a role and actually perform and be successful here in a lower down the lineup role. Those are the kinds of free agents that I'm looking to see, that maybe the Senators have a sniff with some of them.
Ridly Greig is probably feeling right now like his time might have been better served elsewhere rather than as a free trip to Czechia, I guess, but he didn't play a ton for Team Canada, and Canada finished up 4th at the World Hockey Championships in Czechia, and I was a little surprised by that. I mean, I looked at that roster, and there's some good names there, but I didn't think that that Ridly Greig fell so far outside of what everyone else was doing. Like, even in I looked at the stats, and of the first 8 games, I think he played 4, and of those 4 games, he was averaging about 5.5 minutes ice time. I don't know. I'm curious as to the decision making right there.
Well, he wasn't in the lineup to begin the tournament. He was like 14th forward, 13th forward. Then he became, 14th. Then he became the 13th and got into a couple games early. But he really wasn't even. He killed a couple penalties here and there, but never really seemed to get into the good graces. I wonder if it's the type of game that he plays, and maybe they were a little concerned that, there might be a penalty or two here and there, but he never really got an opportunity to play a regular shift, even in the top 12, let alone the top 9, or he would never be in the top 6, but, he never really got a good opportunity to show himself. And as you watch the tournament, you watch Connor Bedard's ice time and position on the roster drop to the point that he was in a group of 4 guys that made up the 4th line by the end of it. He got some power play time, but essentially he just dropped down the lineup. Nick Paul went from, when they started the tournament, Nick Paul was playing with Bedard on the top line, and he ended up being one of the 4 guys in the group of 4 making up the 4th line too. So it was, I'm not going to second guess Coach Big Bear Tournier. I mean, he's got his players over there. He's on top of things. I'm sure he kind of figured it all out and said, this is where guys belong. And they did do well. They just couldn't score at the right time, basically, as the tournament went on. And I was disappointed watching the other teams add players, especially Czechia. I mean, my God, they brought in Pasternak and help me out. What's the other centerman there from Boston? They brought in the 2 of them.
Pavel Zacha.
And then they brought in the guy from Carolina, right? Nekash. What's his name? Not Stan Nekash, the other guy. They brought him in too. Like, holy smokes. Canada never seems to do that anymore. There was a time when there was an airlift, a CFL term for you, Steve. There was always that airlift in the CFL bringing in U.S. guys. But it seemed to be a common thing even for Canada at the Worlds. But in the last 5-6 years, they're like, this is our roster. We're going to build as a team. We're going to get better as the tournament goes on, yada, yada. And it doesn't always pay off when these other teams are bringing in guys. And it was, when it got to the Final Four, I really didn't think they had a shot. If I was a betting man, but I didn't want to, but I was willing to bet on Switzerland if I had to. I didn't think they were going to win that. And Sweden was a very good team. And Czechia was the best team there. I really think they were better than Sweden, even though Sweden had the better record. By the end of the tournament, Czechia was the best team there.
Pretty crazy, though. I still think, anytime Czechia wins, I think this is the first time they've won since 1985 at home. And they weren't even the Czech Republic yet. They were still Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
So they've undergone 2 name changes since they last won a world gold at home. And it's their first world gold period. Or the first time it's 2010 or something they may have won. But no, I didn't really have them.
They did win a little thing called the Olympics, though, in there too, right?
Right.
Yeah, they got that one.
Czechia?
Yeah, that's what they go. That's what they're called. What?
Did they won the Olympics?
Yeah, they had that Hasek guy in net there that year, remember?
Oh, yeah, they went on to win that year. Yeah, that was Czech Republic.
Yeah.
But no, I was just thinking in terms of the last few. Anyway, whatever. Czechia's hockey history is not of any interest to us.
Did you watch much of it, Steve?
I watched a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was. I certainly didn't watch a ton, and I certainly didn't expect to see the Swiss in the final. But they had a better team.
Yes.
Every good NHL player that is from Switzerland ended up playing on that team. And you're right. It's with, Canada having so many more available players. It's, I don't want to say borderline disappointing, because at the end of the day, it's not a best on best. So I never fret about it too much anyway. But yeah, you're right. In the old days, it always seemed to be a bunch of guys going over, and, on the Ovechkin front, if Russia were playing, after Washington was dispatched really quickly in the first round, you guarantee that Ovechkin is over. And I wonder why that attitude doesn't permeate with the Canadians.
Well, the standard argument is that to them, this is their Stanley Cup. I get that for the domestic players, the guys who play at home or play in a KHL or play somewhere in Europe. The guys that play in the NHL, no, the Stanley Cup is their Stanley Cup. They still want to play in the Worlds, though. There's something in their makeup that while it is a big deal to represent your country in Canada, it's a big deal. But to go somewhere and do it is a different story. To go to a foreign land and do it is a different story. If the tournament's in Canada or in the U.S., a lot more guys would say yes. And I know I've shared this with you before, but for some of our listeners who may be new, I know that standard answers of no is somewhere between 65 and 100 every year. I am not exaggerating, folks. Out of players that are asked, there's at least 65 no's every single year that Team Canada gets. Now, the U.S. with Bill Guerin, this year was a little different because it was building for the Olympics and the Four Nations Cup and all that. The U.S. under Bill Guerin said, he made it quite clear, if you don't want to come here, then that's going to be a serious black mark when it comes time to pick in future U.S. national teams. Canada had the sort of same thing, but nowhere near the iron fist approach. So the U.S. probably drew a lot better players than Canada did. Canada, not so much, because, again, I really believe that it wasn't quite, you better be here, boys, if you want us to consider you for the Four Nations Cup.
Right. Well, the Senators did pretty well for Team USA. All in all, I think, Shane Pinto had something like, 7, 9 points, something like that. And I think Brady Tkachuk finished third overall in scoring. So they had a good account of themselves, but they got eliminated in the quarterfinals, which is the earliest they've gone home in the last 5 years. And they still have not won a gold medal since 1933.
Goaltending hurt them.
Yeah.
Which is one of their strengths. They just didn't get any of the big names to come.
Yeah. Sort of a familiar ground for Brady Tkachuk. Not getting the results as a team he's hoping for. Goaltending kind of letting them down and going home early. So he's probably getting a little tired.
And Jordan Binnington, good on him. If he really is our best hope in net, good on him for going. Right? I'm not a fan of the other two, but good on Jordan Binnington for going. It's interesting. You can look at there was a time where you could look at a Team Canada roster, be it national seniors, or be it the junior team, or be it the U18 team, or whatever. Generally speaking, for years, the forwards were from Ontario and Quebec a little bit. That's where the Quebecers would fit in, but mostly the majority of the forwards would be from Ontario. The majority of your defensemen would be from out west, and the goaltenders would be from Quebec. That's your standard roster, right? Nowadays, you look at this team that played in the Worlds, out of the 15 or 14 forwards, I believe the number was 8 or might have even been 9 were from Ontario. Something like 6 of the 8 D were from the prairies. But then when it came to the goaltending, there's nobody in Quebec, there's nobody in Ontario, there's nobody anywhere. Goaltending is a serious issue for Canada now on the world stage.
Yeah, it used to be a slam dunk. It'd be like, it's not a matter of whether they'll have great goaltending. It would be which great goaltender will they choose. They've had the run of Patrick Roy and Marty Brodeur and Carey Price. Might have been some Curtis Joseph in there from time to time, but it's just, yeah. Where have the great Canadian goalies gone? To close out today, we've got some coaching changes. Scott Arniel has ended up with the Winnipeg Jets. He replaces Rick Bowness, who decided to call it a career after, what is his number? Something like over 2,000 games behind
crazy.
an NHL bench.
Crazy.
That includes assistant coach as well. And it sounds like Dan Bylsma, the former Pittsburgh Penguins Cup-winning head coach, who's currently with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, looks like he's going to get promoted and go up to the top farm club or the top NHL affiliate. And that would the only NHL affiliates. He's going from Coachella to the Seattle Kraken. Elliot Friedman reporting today that Dan Bylsma will be Dave Hackstall's replacement with the Kraken.
And LA officially named Jim Hiller the other day, right? So they're done. Are there any openings left, Steve?
Yep, San Jose.
There you go. Yeah. Do you want that job?
Well, it would just be like it was taken over, like Rick Bowness, we mentioned him ago, the way he took over the Ottawa Senators expansion club, and he lasted 3 years, and that was that because they just moved on, man. And a little bit like DJ Smith.
All those big names that were out there, none of them seem to get these jobs. Like, where's there was even rumors of Joel Quenneville, right? There was Gerard Gallant. There's a guy in Minnesota who was with Team Canada, who I like to come to Ottawa. Dean Evison. Where was Dean Evison in all this? A lot of guys out there not getting sniffs. It's kind of, or even where did McClellan go? I don't think he went anywhere, did he? There's a lot of guys out there who didn't get jobs. So it'll be
Jay Woodcroft.
Yeah, another one who was with Team Canada with the Bear there in Czechia at the Worlds. A lot of guys will be on a short leash to start the season. Maybe that's where some of these guys might jump in November, December next year.
It's funny that thought process, like Claude Julien, I think it was the last Olympics. He jumped in and thought, that might help expedite an NHL job. But there's another guy that's still on the unemployment line, would like to get back in, had spoken about the Ottawa Senators as being a job that he might be intrigued by, worth talking about, but no, not to be. And with that, we'll call it a day, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of ground covered there. And by the way, some Sens prospects and draft prospects at the Memorial Cup to keep an eye on. You've got, first of all, you get Jorian Donovan, Sean's son.
Scored a
Chummy.
nice goal.
He sure did. Yeah, it was very nice. He's with the Saginaw Spirit. And there's a couple of draft prospects that will be right there, probably available to the Sens at 7th overall. You've got, on the one hand, his Saginaw teammate Zane Parekh, who looks like, I don't know, mini Erik Karlsson out there. All offense, so much skill, great skating, defense. And then you've got Sam Dickinson with the London Knights. That's another guy. He's ranked 6th. Parekh is ranked 7th, according to Bob McKenzie's list. So some players of interest, I think, for Sens fans to keep an eye on. Are you watching any Memorial Cup?
I've watched a little bit. Yeah, it was interesting. I watched the Parekh kid because I wanted to see him play. And then I saw a highlight pack. Somebody, when you go online, you can get the mini game kind of package. When you click on, you get the goal highlights or you can get the game highlights. And the Parekh kid was all over the place, especially earlier in that game. And then you see the goals against, and he's also on the ice for the goals against. And he's just kind of softly standing around, gliding around. I'm like, okay, we don't want that guy. I don't want to see that guy here. I love the offensive numbers, the stats, the puck control is wonderful to see, but his defensive play was, whoa, man, come on, buddy. Get your head out of your buttocks there and get in the game.
Yeah, even at the Memorial Cup, you have to take the highlights with a grain of salt because even the Memorial Cup teams, the majority of those 4 teams are filled with players who aren't getting anywhere near the NHL. And keep that in mind when you're watching your YouTube draft prospect profile highlight reels. They're even more so. These are the best of the best in junior hockey. But a lot of these guys have made their name taking down guys who will never get near the NHL. So what they are, the junior ranks, isn't always what they'll be at the NHL ranks. This just in.
Good point.
That will do it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us here today. Greg, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you in our next episode.
Thank you, Steve. You too.